Hey there, everybody. How are you? So, we're going to talk about Rotten Tomatoes and these scores for the Star Wars movies here, because officially now, The Rise of Skywalker has become the lowest critically rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes, just coming underneath The Phantom Menace. Now, they've got a couple more reviews in at 52%. Phantom Menace sits at 53%. I'm not a huge advocate for really anything Rotten Tomatoes does, but I thought this was interesting enough and definitely worth at least discussing a little bit because it's so shocking to me that this critically, just per this website, is considered to be the worst Star Wars movie, essentially. And I think it's so far from that. It's not even the worst in this trilogy. The Last Jedi, by far, is the inferior film out of this trilogy. And that movie is critically acclaimed, which is crazy. So I just found this very interesting. I really enjoyed The Rise of Skywalker quite a lot, and it might be my favorite of this trilogy, depending on how time goes on. I'm riding off the high of it right now. It could be between this and Force Awakens for sure, but I'm still riding the high from The Rise of Skywalker right now, and just blows my mind how this would be considered critically worse than every other Star Wars film ever released. Attack of the Clones, The Last Jedi, those are my least two favorite out of the 9 of the Skywalker saga, and the only one that I really have issues with and despise in cases is The Last Jedi. Attack of the Clones isn't my favorite by any means, but there's not anything in that movie that I hate. It's just the same stuff that we've all talked about and add complaints within the prequel side of things. So Attack of the Clones is still a serviceable film. The Last Jedi goes in there and it really wrecks things. It really just wrecks so much out of that there. And now, The Rise of Skywalker comes around, and what JJ was left with to accomplish in The Rise of Skywalker, to me it's a masterpiece based on what was left for him to complete. The Last Jedi didn't leave him anything to work with at all. Every single thread that had been opened up in The Force Awakens that ran through The Last Jedi all got squashed in some capacity. Nothing was elaborated on. Nothing could have been a continuing theme. The Last Jedi really felt like it could have been the close of this trilogy in a sense. You had a couple little key things in there just to tidy up some stuff, and that felt like it could have been the end. The little band of rebels, just a couple make it out, they fly out on the Falcon, and who knows where they go from there. The little boy shows up, see that he's Force sensitive, and the future hope is still there, if anything were to come. Really felt like the close of this trilogy. And could have been the saga. Like I said, you had a couple little things in The Last Jedi that could have easily just been the closing chapter. So for JJ to come in, and I know a lot of people talk about this movie being rushed, and yes, it's very rushed in the beginning, but honestly, the second time that I saw it, slowed down a lot. The first time, things are cruising, I didn't have a problem with it because the task that he had to do with this, you can't take your time. There wasn't an option to take your time unless you were going to do an episode 9 and then episode 10. So the fact that they just squeeze all this in with runtime restrictions and such, you got to hit the ground running. So them kicking off with Emperor Palpatine right in the beginning, you have to establish that. You can't bring the Emperor in halfway through the movie. You had to do that, and I think he realized that. We got to just hit the ground running here. And that's why I feel, and I said this in a previous video, that's why I really feel that these movies in this trilogy, the Disney trilogy, 7, 8, and 9, it's going to be really hard to present this to future generations because it's not going to feel cohesive at all. A lot of what The Rise of Skywalker does is makes you feel better about Star Wars if you walked out of The Last Jedi completely despising it. That movie divided a fan base entirely. And again, if you like The Last Jedi, there's nothing wrong with that. There's things in there are great moments in that movie. There's things that I really like in that movie. But the things that I don't like, and not just based on, the characters, and some of the disrespect that's done to certain characters and such. Not even those things. There's just writing things in that movie that just are absolutely bonkers. Rose Tico knocking Finn off his trajectory to take out the big, death ray at the end that's going to take out the Resistance. Are you kidding me? She has zero idea that Luke Skywalker's about to show up and stall this whole operation. By her doing that and you're miles away from your base, everybody's going to get blown to shreds. Unless Luke shows up, but you don't know Luke is going to show up. So her whole thing of, saving what you love instead of killing what you hate, it makes zero sense within the context of those characters. In the movie, yeah, you can play it off because Luke shows up and stalls everything, and they happen to run miles back to base with none of these guerrilla walkers picking them off. So, 100%, suspending disbelief there, but just within the context of like those characters, it makes zero sense at all. So there's so many moments like that in The Last Jedi, which really took me out of it and started to bother me as time went on. So stuff like that in The Rise of Skywalker, again, man, he wrapped up so much in this movie, and it's not perfect. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but with what was left from The Last Jedi and what he had to do in this movie, it was an impossible task, and I felt like with what was left, he did an amazing job with that. And it's a bummer in a sense, because what could have been, if episode 8 was serviceable and everything felt cohesive and they had a plan and they were working through this, 9 could have been monumentous. But with what we were left with, I felt JJ did a fantastic job, and I really enjoyed The Rise of Skywalker. So it's so surprising to me that movie is getting so much hate. And I feel a lot of that is just the bleeding from The Last Jedi. When the fan base divided, it turned into all these extreme parties. Everybody was happy after The Force Awakens for the most part. A lot of people wanted to talk about it being, a total rehash of A New Hope, which valid arguments with a lot of that stuff, but that is Star Wars. I mean, you could say The Phantom Menace was a rehash of A New Hope too. There's so many threads that tie all of that exactly the same way. So I didn't have a problem with it feeling familiar. I wanted it to feel familiar. That's Star Wars. I wanted to feel like I was watching a Star Wars movie. Star Wars is about all the stuff that we saw in A New Hope and Empire and Return of the Jedi. I felt JJ set this up enough to where it was a safe play, get people back invested into everything so we can continue that story and go off and do new things. The Last Jedi could have been so much more with that. Instead, it squashed everything that was set up, what could have been new ideas, and then JJ had to come back in episode 9 and try to tie as much back, and it's just the whole thing turned into a mess. So that's where the big bummer with The Rise of Skywalker comes in, is what it could have been. But aside from that, and again, kind of growing up with these movies here, and everyone that was, living through this whole Disney transition and seeing all the hate and the backlash from The Last Jedi and all the hype trains and the debates and everything from that into this movie, with all of that taken into account and the task that JJ had, and just an impossible task, I really feel that he brought it home. I was very happy with the movie. And now that I've had some time to kind of like marinate on it, there are definitely things that, could have been done a little bit better. The whole ending sequence in the movie felt very rushed. That could have been definitely, stretched out and added about 5 or 10 minutes to that climactic ending between, Rey, Palpatine, and everything going on there. That definitely could have been stretched out. But nevertheless, I'm just blown away that The Rise of Skywalker is considered to be the critically the worst of any Star Wars movie ever made, per Rotten Tomatoes. And again, I don't take Rotten Tomatoes with anything more than a grain of salt, but I just felt this was interesting to talk about, because it's honestly, it's in the top half of Star Wars movies for me. I mean, the original trilogy is, nothing tops that there. But right underneath that would be between Rogue One, The Force Awakens, and Rise of Skywalker. Those would be kind of right there, mixed in with the prequels, and then Last Jedi and Attack of the Clones, Solo, kind of falling to the way bottom. So just thought it was interesting. Love to know your guys' thoughts on this here. I haven't looked at any other sites as far as like what the reviews are and such. I don't really follow the reviews all that much, because what's really most important is, how you feel about the movie. This was just interesting to me, and I just felt I would share my thoughts a little bit. So hope you guys enjoyed the movie as much as I did. And, and like I said, as much as everything that movie had stacked up against it, sometimes, depending on how you view the movie, you got to look through and past certain things, and it sucks that that's what, we had to do with this trilogy. But in that lens, I really appreciate and enjoy The Rise of Skywalker for what it was. And, thank you, JJ, for doing what you did with that. So that's going to do it for today's video, guys. If you're new to the channel, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll see you in the next video. And until next time, may the Force be with you.